You always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Let's get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia.
Oh, no.
I will if you will.
You go, gal.
Yeah, boy!
It's going to be strong again. We're going to make it great again. We're going to be respected again.
He loses jobs, he loses businesses, he loses in court. And no matter what J.D. Vance says, he lost the 2020 election.
As Donald Trump loves to say to Kamala Harris, in just 7 short days, you're fired. We're taking back the Oval Office for the American people.
They want a leader who brings us together and also brings us together in a way that we're focused on the future.
Hello, I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. With 1 week to go until Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris continues to lay out her campaign's closing argument. During her speech at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. tonight, she's expected to strike a balance between warnings about her rival and what her campaign calls forward-looking optimism. The Ellipse is where then-President Donald Trump addressed a crowd he encouraged to march to the Capitol on January 6, 2021, shortly before it was violently attacked in a failed bid to overturn the election he lost to President Biden. Former President Trump, as for him, will be in Allentown, Pennsylvania tonight. This moment could be a major test of the fallout from Sunday's crude and deeply offensive remarks made by a speaker at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Latino voters in Allentown and neighboring Reading could play a major role in picking the next resident of the White House and who wins Pennsylvania. Earlier in the day at his Mar-a-Lago estate, Trump addressed the rally. He attacked Vice President Harris and defended his event.
I don't think anybody has ever seen anything like what happened the other night at Madison Square Garden. The love in that room, it was breathtaking.
And we have new polling out of Pennsylvania tonight. It shows a tied race as we head toward Election Day. A deeper dive into those numbers is coming up. But we'll start tonight with Nancy Cordes and Caitlin Huey-Burns on the campaign trail. Great to see both of you. Nancy, you're in Washington, D.C., down the street at the Ellipse tonight. What is the vice president hoping to get out of this gathering of all of her supporters, thousands of them, it seems, behind you near the Washington Monument and the White House?
And they're still streaming in, Robert. There is a majesty to this location, first and foremost. That's part of the reason that it was chosen, just to kind of give people an orientation. I'm standing on the Ellipse. It's a big grassy area that is located between the White House, which you can see just over my shoulder. And then, of course, you see the podium where the vice president will be speaking in a couple of hours. And then beyond us, on the other side of the Ellipse, is the National Mall and the Washington Monument. So there is a grandeur to speaking here with the White House over her shoulder. And of course, it is, as you mentioned, the same spot where former President Trump gave that fateful speech nearly 4 years ago, where he tried to convince his supporters, who frankly didn't need much convincing, that he had actually won when he had lost. They got very fired up. You know what happened next. They marched to the Capitol and they broke in. And so that is something that Harris wants to bring up tonight, wants to juxtapose. She's going to argue that Trump is only out for himself while she is out for the American people. According to prepared excerpts that we have received, she's going to say that Trump is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. A short time ago, I spoke to a Harris campaign senior advisor, David Plouffe, and asked him why they want to focus so heavily on the event that took place here nearly 4 years ago with just 1 week left in this campaign. Take a listen.
Why focus on what was a very dark day in U.S. history?
Well, Donald Trump wants to be rehired, so I think it's worth reminding people
about what he's like. He's reminding us every day the division and the chaos. But January 6th is just going to be a small part of the speech. She's going to very much turn to what's on the American people's minds today, which is how to pay the bills and lower costs, protect our health care, Social Security and Medicare, but also the character of these two people, which is at the end of the day, Donald Trump is increasingly unstable.
Unstable and unhinged, those are words you can expect to hear again, Robert, when Harris takes the stage.
Caitlin, you're on the campaign trail with former President Trump. You've been talking to voters about that Madison Square Garden rally. What have you been hearing?
Well, Bob, a little bit of context as to why he's campaigning here in Allentown. This event was scheduled well before those racist remarks by the comedian at Madison Square Garden. The reason the Trump campaign was coming here to Allentown is because this is a majority Latino city. And in this city, Puerto Ricans make up nearly a third of the voters here. So the idea that he was going to come here anyway tells you how critical this vote is in this key battleground state where our polling shows a totally tied race at this stage. So we spent some time earlier today walking around the neighborhood where this rally is being held, and we ran into a few people. One woman told us that she's actually thinking of changing her mind now that she heard those comments. She is from Puerto Rico. She said she was leaning towards Trump and now won't vote for him. And we also talked to some of his supporters as well, who say the comedian is to blame. Take a listen.
I was all Trump until then.
You were all Trump until those comments?
Yep.
And even though he didn't say them,
It's still his campaign.
How can you condemn a whole country? It's not fair, you know? They're citizens of the United States, all of them anyway.
So you heard from those two Trump supporters at the end there. They are actually Dominican, but the Latino vote in Pennsylvania is so critical, Bob. They make up about 6% of the electorate in Pennsylvania. And as you well know, this state was determined by such a slim margin in 2020. It's tied right now. Every vote counts. So this question of potentially marginalizing some voters, that question remains as to whether that could sway in a state like Pennsylvania. Now, the Trump campaign has distanced themselves from those comments, as you know, but the former president himself has not condemned the remarks. He had an opportunity earlier in the day talking to reporters, didn't condemn the remarks, instead leaned into his key issue in the closing days of the campaign, an issue that has been really front and center of his political push for the past 8 years or so, and that is on the issue of immigration.
Nancy, when you spoke to David Plouffe, who's such a veteran of Democratic politics, what did he make of Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden and whether it would have an impact on the campaign?
Right. Well, the campaign has been insisting that it is already showing up as a factor, that the Madison Square Garden rally broke through in a very unique way to voters who are being inundated with messages and ads and social media posts in the closing week of this campaign. I asked him how he can tell that it is actually resonating with voters in such a way that it could actually affect the vote. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Our organizers are picking up in those communities. People were saying, I wasn't sure how I was going to vote. Now I'm voting for Kamala Harris. So it was a huge mistake. But here's what I've learned in politics. Things that really hurt you are things that are consistent with what people may already think about you. So that chaos and that hate and that division, for a lot of voters, they say, that's what I'm worried about. I've got concerns about that. So it was the worst closing argument in the history of American politics, and that's saying something.
Now, Plouffe does not think in any way that this race is going to be a cakewalk or is in the bag for Kamala Harris. He insisted it is going to be razor tight in every single battleground state. And so he argued that even though they view what happened at Madison Square Garden as a win for them, they've got to keep pushing forward. They've got to run through the tape if they're going to have a hope of winning this election.
And Caitlin, how does the Trump campaign see their coalition in this final stretch? Do they really believe this early vote total that's strong in many states is Trump's base coming out, or do they see it as voters who might be voting for the Democratic nominee instead?
Well, they're certainly encouraged by the early vote numbers, and that's because the campaign itself has been trying to push their voters to show up early or return absentee ballots early to get that vote in before Election Day if possible. And Bob, that is a marked difference, of course, from 2020. And it's also a difference from how the candidate himself talks about early voting. While the campaign wants their voters to show up early to kind of bank in those votes in the key battleground states where it's an option, the candidate, the principal, is on stage like the one behind me, raising doubts already about early voting and the election already. And so this is kind of going to be a key theme in these closing days. A campaign wanting voters to bank those votes, and the candidate still raising questions about the integrity of early voting in his view. Trump himself plans to vote on Election Day. His wife, Melania, confirmed that in an interview earlier today. They will vote in Florida, where he will also hold his election night rally near West Palm.
Nancy Cordes and Caitlin Huey-Burns on the campaign trail, reporting for CBS. Thank you so much. Make sure to watch Election Night with the CBS News team live from our election headquarters in New York, and our teams will be spread out across the country. Join us on Tuesday for real-time results, analysis, exclusive polling. Coverage will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS News 24/7 and at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS.
Do not hand our fates over to the likes of Trump, who knows nothing about us.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama looks to rally voters in Atlanta tonight. Our Nicole Killian is there. We'll preview her message to Georgia voters. Your streaming America decides.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy!
It's gonna be a ride. Sunshine it down.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour.
This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage.
That, of course, was former First Lady Michelle Obama and her message to voters in Michigan over the weekend. The former First Lady is on the trail this evening, once again, rallying voters in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's bring in Nicole Killian, who is following the former First Lady. Nicole, great to see you. Set the scene for us down there in Georgia.
Well, it is quite a scene, Bob. You can probably see behind me a lot of folks lined up here, many of them college students, some from Spelman College, also Savannah State, a number of other Georgia schools. And look, you know, so much of this event here tonight is really about mobilizing voters. I want to be very clear that former First Lady Michelle Obama is not here in her capacity of stumping for Vice President Kamala Harris, which is something that we saw over the weekend in Michigan, but rather this is some of the work that she has been doing for a number of years now in terms of her nonpartisan organization When We All Vote, which really has focused a lot on voter registration, voter mobilization, particularly in black and brown communities. So that really is the focus of tonight's event, to energize voters, to celebrate first-time voters, and really focus in this final week on upping that turnout, making sure people get out and have their voices heard.
Nicole, what are you hearing from voters in Atlanta?
Well, you know, we talked to a couple of folks here about being here tonight and, you know, what they think the former First Lady brings to the table, particularly in a state like Georgia, which will be so crucial in this election. Take a listen.
She's such a dynamic person and personality, and I certainly think that she can help to encourage those folks who may be indecisive.
I think Georgia we're going to have a great turnout this time, just like we did in 2020, if not better. I think we're already on the path to become, to outnumber what we did last time in the last election. At least that's what we're hoping for, because of course we ended in purple, but we want to turn this state blue.
So both of those women I talked to have been pretty involved in terms of voter engagement, trying to register new voters. And again, that is very critical in a state here like Georgia, where early voting is already underway. In fact, it surpassed the 3 million mark as of today, which election officials have been very encouraged by. But as you know, in a state like Georgia, particularly when we're talking about African Americans, they make up about a third of the electorate here. So that is why there is a lot of energy and effort in this final week of really trying to drive turnout among that demographic. Certainly that can make or break things either for Vice President Harris or former President Trump, who are both trying to court that specific demographic.
Nicole, several professional basketball players have been helping with the get out the vote efforts. What's going on with the NBA and their participation in politics, at least some of the players?
Yeah, excuse me, sir. You know, this is really a part of, again, Michelle Obama's work around When We All Vote. And so earlier today, the organization released a new ad with a number of athletes, some of whom are involved with her organization, like Chris Paul and Steph Curry. Take a listen to the ad that they released earlier today.
I'm a baller, a shooter, I'm a rookie, I'm a coach, a Hall of Famer, a playmaker, I'm a world champion, record breaker, a history maker, a leader.
I'm a WNBA champion.
But most importantly, I'm a voter. I'm a voter. I'm a voter. I'm a voter. And no matter who you are, what you do,
or what people call you,
this year, call yourself a voter. Period. Make your plan to vote now and make your voice heard.
So again, whether it's young voters like those who are here today, also reaching out to young men, which we know is a very critical demographic as well. You know, these are the types of efforts and campaigns we are seeing on the part of the former First Lady to, again, try to drive turnout among some of those demographics that could be essential to the upcoming election, Bob.
Nicole Killian, thank you so much for your reporting. The race is tied now in Pennsylvania, 1 week out from Election Day. Our new CBS News poll finds Vice President Harris and former President Trump Both have 49% support there. It's been extremely tight in the battleground state for months. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, always great to see you. What do you make of Pennsylvania tonight?
Hey there, Bob. Well, let me tell you a story about Pennsylvania, and I'm going to start in 2016 so that when people watch this, see what they're going to keep an eye on, how it unfolds. In 2016, Donald Trump shifted a lot of the vote in a lot of these counties. You see that red shift, even if slightly, including out where Caitlin is, out and around Allentown, Lehigh Valley. And then when we got to 2020, Joe Biden shifted a lot of that back. And you see that blue shift, but particularly in those areas up around Lehigh Valley. Now, one of the key things about Pennsylvania, Bob, that we're going to watch on election night is that region around Philadelphia, around the suburbs. I'm going to bring up that 2020 vote because you see how it's all blue? It's not that those counties necessarily flip. It's the margins that Democrats win by in and around there that matters a lot, too. So when you talk about turnout, I point out Philadelphia, right? Democrats getting that more than 450,000 more votes out of Philadelphia, out of Montgomery County, more than 100,000 votes. That's one of the key things. I do want to add one other point, though, because you hear a lot in the campaign about how Kamala Harris is going after maybe some Republican voters, maybe trying to get some crossover there. Let me show you this ticket splitting chart because you do see some elasticity in the Republican vote there. 2022, look at this example where the gubernatorial candidate, where Shapiro got a lot more votes, even compared to the Democratic Senate candidate Fetterman when he won. That suggests that there might be some Republicans at least willing to vote for a Democrat. I suspect that the Harris campaign might be trying to target some of them and maybe help that small margin make a big difference, Bob.
Anthony, what about the reporting of Pennsylvania on election night, especially if the results are close? What do we know?
Well, let me rewind the clock for you and just play back 2020. And I'll show you, which is the story here, going to be patience. This is what it looked like at 9 p.m., an hour after poll close, right? Almost no counties had substantially reported. If I show you 10 p.m., you get a smattering of counties, but often smaller ones that went for Donald Trump. So the point here is that you want to see a lot more counties before you get a real sense of how the vote might be going. It might be tilted towards one candidate initially, but so many haven't voted. And then it's only after all the votes start to come in that you can see all the areas fill in. That might be what we're in for again with a race that's this close, Bob.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you. Appreciate it. It's going to be interesting on election night. Speaking of Pennsylvania, let's swing by Pennsylvania's swingiest county. Democrats and Republicans are battling for Bucks County. We'll take a closer look coming up next on America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Get coffee!
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Democratic Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro has called Bucks County the swingiest. What a word. Swingiest, a swingy swing county and a swingy state. It's Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Paul Kane of the Washington Post recently knocked on voters' doors there and wrote about his experience for the Washington Post. Paul joins us now. Paul, my former colleague at the Post, always great to see you. You were having a bit of an adventure in my home county, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Yeah. What did you learn, Paul?
Well, you know, look, when you grew up there, I think the neighborhood we were walking in is about 8 miles, maybe 10 miles away from Pennsbury High School, where you went. I was a Upper Dublin kid in Montgomery County, a little further west. But we grew up with this image of Bucks County as such a place of moderation. It is the swingiest county in the swingiest state. That's what Josh Shapiro called it. And that's because Barack Obama in 2012 won the county by like 1%, 4,000 votes. Hillary Clinton won it by less than that, 2,700 votes. And that was not a big enough margin for her, and she ended up losing the state. But it also has sent such moderates to Congress, both Fitzpatrick brothers, Republicans, Mike and Brian, Patrick Murphy, a moderate Democrat. But what I found is that there's just a sense of real anger and division there. There isn't this sort of sense of community. Brian Fitzpatrick, the current representative who's wins regularly, despite being such a moderate Republican, not a Trump guy, works across the aisle. He campaigns on a theme of one community. His lawn signs say one community. His website says one community. But boy, it feels more and more like two communities there between the people that support Trump and the people that just despise Trump. You know, these Democratic voters that we talked to were not there sort of begging for policy position from Kamala Harris. They just wanted her to beat Trump.
And Paul, when you look at the map of Pennsylvania, help us understand why Bucks County matters so much. It's not just that it's a swingy county. It's vote rich. There are hundreds of thousands of people living there.
Sure. Yeah, there are some smaller counties that are also pretty closely divided as well. But Bucks County has about 480,000 registered voters. Republicans edged ahead this summer and fall and ended up with about 204,000 voters. And the Democrats are coming in around 200,000. And the next 75 to 80,000 are all basically independents or some other party affiliation. That makes it a really unique spot in the Philadelphia suburbs and the Philadelphia collar counties, as we call them now, because the rest of those counties, Delco, Delaware County, everyone calls it Delco, Montgomery County, Chester County, they've all drifted pretty far to the Democratic side. But Bucks County remains as this big voter haul that is really split pretty evenly. And so that's why there's such a focus on it. It's not just we really want to win here, win by a couple of points, but that couple of points translates into 10,000 votes, 20,000 votes, which when you look at these elections, Hillary Clinton lost by about 40,000 in Pennsylvania. Joe Biden won by 80,000. Bucks County can be a real critical battleground.
And Paul, I went back to Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania recently to cover Vice President Harris. She had an event there. What's your sense about the Harris campaign's ability to make inroads with traditional Republicans in places like Bucks County? Is that clicking based on your reporting when you're talking to voters?
It is. She's doing good with independents. But again, the Bucks County that I remember growing up next door to has shifted a little bit. It used to be such a sort of lower Bucks, upper Bucks type of divide where the closer they were to the city, you could guarantee that those were old-time working-class Democratic voters. And the further out you got, it was anti-tax country club Republicans. But now with sort of the educational divides within the entire body politic, but within Bucks County, some of those areas that are further out are really well educated and they get repulsed by Trump. Those are the type of voters that she needs to try and go after. But I'll say this, I was there 8 years ago on a trip following Senator Pat Toomey around and in Bucks County, and there was very little presence of Trump. People there were sort of the shy Trump voters. They didn't really want to boast about it. Now you go drive around anywhere in there, Doylestown, Newtown, and you will see Trump signs everywhere. So it's just a different vibe there now. It's a different environment. It's still going to be very close. She needs to win the county and preferably closer to Joe Biden's margin of about 4.3, 4.5%. But it's going to be close.
Regardless of those changing vibes, Paul, I think we can both agree that the vibe that hasn't changed in Bucks County or Pennsylvania, or at least eastern Pennsylvania, is the support for the Philadelphia Eagles this time of year.
Those were the one signs that every house had. Some house had Trump signs, some had Harris, but everybody had an Eagles banner of some sort somewhere on the front lawn or inside the house.
Paul Kane, Fly Eagles Fly. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tonight,
Vice President Harris's event is being billed as her campaign's closing argument. What we can expect to hear from the presidential hopeful. Our political panel, a great one, will weigh in next. Your Streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
an original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We'll never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
That speech by former President Donald Trump on January 6, 2021 came before the horrors at the Capitol. All of it still seared into the American memory. And tonight, Vice President Harris delivers what she is calling her closing argument at the exact same location, just a little bit further, closer to the Washington Monument. That same area, though, where Trump spoke prior to the riot in 2021. Let's bring in our political panel, Ashley Etienne and Kevin Sheridan. Ashley is a CBS News political contributor who served as communications director for Vice President Harris in the White House. Kevin served as a spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. He was also a senior advisor for the Romney-Ryan 2012 presidential campaign. Great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I'd like to begin with remarks Trump just made about those comments made at his Madison Square Garden rally by a person, a comedian, as he calls himself, about Puerto Rico. Let's listen.
I know it very well, and we helped you through a lot of bad storms, I'll tell you. We had some really bad ones. You remember you were there when I brought the hospital ship against everyone's advice, and we got it in there and took care of a lot of people. But I think no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have. So thank you. That's really nice of you to say.
So he said, no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have. Ashley, what's your view of how Trump is handling the fallout from the comment about Puerto Rico that's deeply offended many people? And what's the Democratic response?
Well, I mean, you know, that wasn't his reaction. His reaction to what happened in Madison Square Garden is he said it was a love fest. Mm-hmm. You know, he actually condoned everything that was said there. And I wasn't surprised by it at all because that's who Donald Trump is. That's not only his DNA, but that's the DNA of the entire MAGA movement. This is consistent with what we've seen. When he was president, racial violence was at an all-time high. And I think this is almost poetic for Kamala Harris because what it does is perfectly set up the contrast between what Donald Trump is offering, you know, however you want to process what was said at his rally that he actually condones, and what she's offering for the American people, which is, that, as Reagan said, to be that city on the hill, to reclaim who we are as a nation and get back to the very fundamentals and the core of who we are. And that's going to be the essence of her speech tonight. And she's going to talk about why she's the right leader to take us there and why Donald Trump would be more of this madness, this division, this disrespect for the American people in our towns and places that we call home.
Our colleague at CBS, Nancy Cordes, spoke with David Plouffe, top advisor to the Harris campaign. And Plouffe brought up the Obama-Romney race from 2012. Let's listen to what David Plouffe had to say.
I actually think the race that's most similar to, though, is the 2012 Obama reelect against Mitt Romney. Very close, but we thought we had good momentum and a pathway to winning battleground states. And that's what we see today. I think we very much like what we're seeing in early vote. We're liking the momentum that we're seeing. But this is going to be a super close race, maybe historically close. It could literally come down to, 0.2, 0.4, 0.5%.
What do you make of the comparison?
Yeah, I've been saying it's either 2012 or 2016, but if it's 2016, I think it'll go even more in Trump's favor. I think the 2012 comparison is pretty Should be frightening for Republicans because we did think going into that weekend that we were in a good place, and our ground game did not perform, obviously, and it was a big shocker to a lot of people. We were seeing internal polling numbers that said we were up in Florida. I don't know what both campaigns' internals look like, but the way the campaigns are acting, it really feels like Kamala thinks she's behind right now.
I think back to 2012 and covering that race, Mitt Romney was constantly trying to make inroads with Democratic working persons support, trying to make inroads with labor, trying to get that vote in Michigan where Romney grew up. You see with Vice President Harris now, that same overture to working Americans in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, people who are feeling economic pain. Let's look at one of her latest ads about that appeal to working people.
I was a 7-year-old with a little mullet, just like a Pittsburgher should have, with a Cordell Stewart jersey on, sitting at Three River Stadium watching in 1995. Donald Trump does not care about the working man whatsoever. This guy's not looking out for my family. Talking about giving tax breaks to billionaires?
There's kind of a Bernie Sanders sensibility to the message, but also a almost Trump sensibility to the swagger.
Yeah.
What do you make of it as a communicator and strategist?
Well, this is actually part of the vice president's closing argument. The one part of that ad you did not show, and I regret that you didn't, is he goes into the fact that Donald Trump is not like us. He's a billionaire. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's not like me as a working guy. You know, his dad gave him millions upon millions of dollars. He filed for bankruptcy 6 times. So that ad goes into one of her closing arguments, which is Donald Trump's not like you. He doesn't care about you. He could care less about you. Remember, he oversaw the worst economy in modern history. Remember, he overturned Roe v. Wade and bragged about it. Remember, he said he was going to bring back manufacturing and didn't ask those factory workers who actually brought it back. So that's going to be part of her closing argument, which is Donald Trump, you know, to quote Kendrick Lamar, Donald Trump's not like us, right? And more importantly, he's not for you.
Any closing thoughts in response?
I don't see that ad as being particularly effective. He's got a huge lead among men, young men now coming on board. I think they can try to run this one ad in Steeler country, but he showed up at the Steelers game and USA spontaneously erupted, and the crowd loved him. So I think he's got a big lead with men, but whether or not she can overcome that with her lead with women.
We'll have to leave it there. 1 week before Election Day. Always appreciate your insights. Ashley Etienne, Kevin Sheridan, great to see you both. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Coming up next, how changes down ballot could sway the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. We'll take a closer look at some key contests. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
but with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Election day quickly approaching. Two key Senate races are now narrowing. The Cook Political Report with Amy Walter has shifted the Pennsylvania Senate race between Democratic incumbent Senator Bob Casey and Republican rival David McCormick from lean Democrat to a toss-up. It has also tightened the Nebraska battle. I'm sure you haven't been paying too much attention to that, between Senator Deb Fischer and independent union leader Dan Osborne from likely Republican to lean Republican. Let's get into all of this with Jessica Taylor. She is the Senate and Governor's editor for the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. Great to see you.
Thanks for
Nebraska, why suddenly on the radar? Are you just hedging your bets here? You're seeing some movement? What's really going on in Nebraska?
I mean, I think this is a really unique situation where Deb Fischer, I think she was caught a little bit off guard. There's some Republicans sort of griping that she didn't take this independent challenge seriously enough from Dan Osborne. He's been able to raise a lot of money. He's gotten help from outside groups. He's running as an independent, but there are some Democratic outside groups that have supported him. I think he's a non-traditional candidate. He's a machinist. He's a union leader. He's blue collar. I think he's really sort of tapping into this populism. And in fact, his two most recent ads are making plays for Trump voters. So if he can get Democrats, get a majority of independents and pick off enough Republicans, we are seeing in polling, both private and public, that this is a close race. I think the lean of the state still wins out, but Republicans have had to spend late here to ensure that Fischer wins.
In a presidential election year, though, isn't Nebraska usually a place that votes heavily Republican?
It is, except that remember, of course, Nebraska awards its electoral votes by congressional district. So Nebraska's second congressional district is favored to go Democratic. So I think he's being helped there by by enthusiasm there in that Omaha-based district. But even some of the polling I've seen, he's running, surprisingly well for a non-Republican in even some of the rural areas. But then, this is why it's still lean Republican, not a toss-up. Democrats, I think some of their polling has it a little bit closer. Republicans feel like it's probably a high single-digit race at this point. But I'd still rather be Fischer because of those reasons, because it is a presidential year when you look at the whole state, not just the congressional district there.
In the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned in 2022, did we see Nebraska change at all in terms of who comes out and how Democrats put together a coalition in that state?
Well, you do have, Fischer's emphasizing that, she is pro-life, and I think that, they have an abortion referendum there on the ballot. So, Osborne also hoping that sort of helps him in that regard. But like I said, it's just sort of, it's a very weird coalition he's trying to get. And we've seen these independents sort of try this in the past, in Kansas in 2014, in Alaska in 2020, and with Utah in 2022. But Osborne, he has said he's not taking the endorsement of the state Democratic Party there. But again, Republicans running a lot of ads, including one with President Trump, just emphasizing that Osborne, he hasn't said who he would caucus with either. So that sort of leaves a little bit of intrigue. But I'd still rather be Fischer for a lot of reasons.
In Pennsylvania, I grew up there.
Yeah.
Running against a Casey, that's like running against a Jagger or someone named Lennon for Parliament in the UK. I mean, that name carries in Pennsylvania. It's hard to beat a Casey, isn't it?
It is, but I've heard in some of these focus groups I've been hearing lately that there is sort of this anti-incumbency mood, and I think that McCormick is benefiting from that. I still think McCormick has a tough time in sort of those Philadelphia suburbs when it comes to abortion, but the tightening that I've seen in polls have been there in Western Pennsylvania, around Allegheny, and I think that that McCormick has spent a lot. He's benefited from a lot of outside spending. He has his own super PAC as well. I think that Casey has the potential to run ahead of Harris in some places, certainly, but it's still very close. This is going to be Casey's, I think, closest race. And real quick, could you see a lot of ticket splitting in Pennsylvania, Harris voters who are also McCormick voters? I think you could. Certainly, McCormick's campaign thinks that. They think that they can sort of get some of those, sort of moderate Republicans that maybe don't like Trump that are going to vote for Harris. So we'll see. Jessica Taylor, thank you. Appreciate it. Arab American voters are weighing whether their vote should go to the vice president or Trump as that crisis in the Middle East continues. We'll take a closer look at how that affects Harris's path potentially to the White House. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
That are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Eye on America, weeknights on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Look at his outfit. Give me some love, baby.
Up top.
It's gonna be alright, sunshiny day.
All right.
Welcome back to America Decides. A group of some Democrats is worried that Vice President Harris is struggling to gain the support of Arab American voters in the battleground state of Michigan amid scrutiny of the administration's approach to the war in Gaza. Our Ed O'Keefe spoke with members of the Muslim community there.
Michigan, one of the 7 battleground states that's going to decide who lives in the White House next year. And in this state, there's a few numbers to consider. 4 years ago, President Biden won here by about 154,000 votes. And there's a sizable block of usually reliable Democratic voters in this state, Arab and Muslim Americans who live in and around Detroit and Dearborn. About 146,000 of them voted for President Biden 4 years ago. So if you start to lose their support, you could potentially be seeing a loss in Michigan unless you find another way to make it up. And that is why that group of people in this state has earned such outsized attention ever since, of course, the war in Gaza began last year. We met late last year with a guy named Adam from Dearborn who voted for and campaigned for President Biden 4 years ago and was quite disillusioned by what was happening.
As a community, we're tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. If you were to ask me 2 months ago if I was going to vote for Joe Biden, yeah, I would have held my nose and voted for him.
Nearly a year later, Adam is still thinking about this issue, but has decided exactly how he's going to vote. We talked to him and a few of his friends. Did it get any easier to support Democrats when Harris became the nominee?
Look, when Harris became the nominee, for a lot of people, we felt like, okay, maybe we have an opportunity to have somebody fresh who can change things up and can, maybe shake things up in the Democratic Party. And that was quickly shot down. We saw things like they wouldn't even allow for a Palestinian to speak at the DNC.
So what are you going to do?
Personally, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein.
Really?
Yes.
Because?
Because she has called for an arms embargo. She has called for a permanent ceasefire. She has called to, for conditioning aid. Now, whether she can win in Michigan or not, whether she can win the presidency or not, it's 101% unlikely that she's going to win. But the reality is, I see somebody, I have a choice to vote for somebody that sees me as a human, that sees my family as a human, that actually cares about my community, whether she's going to win or not.
You have a choice in a few days of what to do when it comes to the election. I'm curious first, how did you vote 4 years ago for president?
Biden.
Biden.
And what are you going to do this time?
Third party.
Jill Stein.
Write-in or third party, I haven't made my decision, but it's one of those two.
Write-in or third party.
So not Harris, not Trump.
No.
Did she do anything maybe to compel you to think about possibly supporting her? Or was this just too far a road to go just because of the fact that she supports the president's position on all this?
Well, the fact that she supported and is supporting the president hasn't said anything much different from him, and always says that, just 'cause she's going to be a staunch supporter of Israel is a cause for concern. However, I was willing to give her a chance, and I was part of the uncommitted movement. But at every turn, we were rebuffed, and you just can't ask us to vote for genocide, and it's a terrible position to be in. I don't want to see Trump as president, but I cannot, in good conscience, give her my vote.
Did any of you ever consider voting for Trump?
No.
Yeah.
And why did you do that?
Because we look at this right now, and we're all over here. We've all said we're going to vote either third party or write-in. Third party or write-in for us is pretty much a loss of one vote for Kamala Harris. But if we're looking at this from a number standpoint, voting for Trump is pretty much, it's as if Kamala Harris is losing 2 votes, and from a number standpoint, if I really want Kamala to lose, which I do, I'd rather have Kamala lose than, I don't care what the outcome is. It's not my business, but Kamala didn't earn any of our votes. But if we really want her to lose, a vote for Trump makes more sense, but ethically and morally, I can't get myself to vote for Trump.
You know what could happen, and we talked about this a year ago, Adam. She could lose, and they'll say, well, if only those few thousand people in Dearborn or Hamtramck or other parts of Detroit who are Arab and Muslim had voted for her, she would have won. Right. You could get scapegoated.
That's fine. We already are. I'm sorry, what do we have right now? Think of it. All the people, I've spent the last 12 years of my life helping elect people. I have never, ever worked on a Republican's campaign. It's always been Democratic candidates. We've gotten them elected. What are they doing for us? They won't even answer our calls. It's like, so like when we're going to get scapegoated, what are they going to do? Are they going to kill another 100,000 of us. It's like, seriously, like, what more can they do?
Now, the Harris campaign knows they have a problem. They have been campaigning in those neighborhoods, trying to talk to and convince Arab and Muslim American voters here to reconsider voting against her. We spoke with one of her key surrogates in this part of the state.
She's a compassionate, caring, a person that has integrity. And that's what people want in their leaders today. They want leaders that care for the people. And I met with the vice president, I had that interaction with her, and I felt that compassion, that care. I shared my family story. In 2006, I lost both my grandmothers to Israeli airstrikes. I told her that story. She felt my pain, and I felt it when I looked her in the eye and she looked me in the eye. She's the real deal.
One of the more interesting elements of this part of the story here in Michigan is that it is literally a life or death issue for so many people here who either have relatives and friends who've been killed in Gaza or Lebanon, or have neighbors, co-workers, and friends who know people who've died or been misplaced. It's one of the more urgent issues facing voters in this key battleground state.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you. That does it for us today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report on October 29, 2024. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Tonight, 1 week out from Election Day, the presidential candidates make their final campaign pushes out on the trail. Donald Trump defends his New York City rally as he campaigns in battleground Pennsylvania. And Vice President Kamala Harris prepares to deliver her closing argument in Washington at the same spot where her